Welcome to Quadrupod Studios. Once again, podcasting from space with host Kit Warren, Robin the Hood on the buttons and whistles, and returning guest, survivalist, man of many talents, Darcy from L.O.S Strategies. Kit, welcome, sir.
Welcome.
Take it away.
Wonderful, Robin. Thanks so much. I'm still tired from our knife exposo defense class today.
Yeah.
Welcome, Darcy.
Yeah.
You've been here all day doing the class. Really good to have you on the show again. Quadrupod Studios, health and wellness. Is that my camera?
Yeah, we'll roll with it. We'll roll with it for the
Okay.
moment, for the time being.
Well, we're using new cameras today, so there's always challenging things on the podcast. Our last episode, we had a awesome snore session.
That's fucking awesome.
So, are you tired from today? There's a lot of jousting and stick
man.
work and smashing of the helmets and the pads. You're getting ready for a big event this coming weekend.
I feel charged up. Being that that game in particular, that game of stick whack whack or stab stab with training knives. I find it so fun that I get invigorated for hours after, and then I have a nap.
Yeah.
Or some
Well, it's
tea or something.
adrenaline, big adrenaline, and it's the feeling of getting, oh jeez, that one went in my rib cage, and so your body doesn't know that you're almost tricking your body into the practice and play of it, and then it becomes almost like a real event.
Well, it's another way to condition the mind and the body at the same time, And so some of the games that we played today, something as simple as working on conditioning the mind for that really close range, even though like the clinch generally only lasts for, like in a real fight, maybe only lasts for a second or a millisecond, whereas like some of the drills that we did today, breaking it down to that Drake drill, we're really working on that range by expanding it into its own game. And really trying to explore where we can take the game, the tactile game, because we're really working on our touch, our sensitivity.
Yep.
Reading those tiny little differences, whether they're shifting one way or the other, if they're pushing or if they're pulling or if they're repositioning, any of that stuff, we want to be able to read it maybe a millisecond before it happens by feeling that grain of the muscle lock up as that change, that shift happens. Or I guess, like I said, the millisecond before it happens. So then we can adapt to that, and it almost seems like we're moving faster, but really it's just that strong, like yin focus on those small movements that end up being big ones.
Definitely. I think that's the first contact, is those small movements. And so then that first point of contact is an important mathematical equation of what gets pushed a certain way or what gets grabbed for a leash or all the things that then happen after that.
Well, the idea of the leash, I mean, so folks, what he's talking about is at some point in a lot of the games we play, these martial arts games, there's contact made. And a good way to look at it is like in hockey, the fighters will grab a hold of one another and then throw a really strong dominant hand punch over and over again to the head. Now, the opposite hand, the support hand, is usually going to be holding on to the person, creating a leash. And so whatever the martial art is, if there's any sort of grappling involved, that moment where the leash takes hold, it's really important to break that leash. Like even in the knife game that we play, if someone grabs a hold of you and goes to thrust, as much as I want to deal with that thrust coming towards me, I also want to angle off and really work on breaking that leash. Otherwise, I'm just going to be stuck kind of like in their range that they want, which won't allow me to manipulate range to my own advantages.
And some of those names that you've got for the different concepts, like the leash being a energy holding somebody's grain or controlling their center. What are some of the names that you can explain it that sort of go back to some of the arts?
Yeah, well, like so, the idea of like the grain is often it's understood by a lot of martial arts, but not often does it have a name. And the reason why we call it the grain is because it's a way to describe kind of what's happening in the body that you can feel, and as the person who's doing it, and then the person
It's almost like,
yeah,
you set that
grain
solidness, or you could set it, more like water, and then it's harder to read. So
well, that's it. Is like the softer the grain is, the harder it is to read, and you want to have a balance where you've got strong energy happening in the right way. So, for instance, like a punch. Somebody throws a punch. If they lock up their entire arm as they throw the punch, they'll actually make it slower because they've set the grain kind of on the push and pull at the same time. Whereas if they just set the grain in the right areas and keep most of it loose, it'll have more of a snap, and they'll be able to put it out and back fast enough.
that's an awesome concept, and you're actually training this kind of stuff down at Quadrupod.
Yeah, man.
Sunday and Wednesdays, but for the most part. And what's it take for people to come and learn this kind of stuff? What are we getting specific students? We're making sure that these people are conditioned to be healthy with this martial art?
I think you hit it on the nails right there. Is like they have to be mentally healthy.
Yep.
I mean, I want to train with people that if in training, an accident happens where they get hurt from their own volition or from their training partner making an accident by whatever the means it happens, they have to keep a cool head.
Yeah.
And if we're playing a game in which the pressure and the volume of energy gets cranked up, we should all be able to drop that energy at a moment's notice. We should be able to shake hands, hug, whatever, smoke a joint after without any issues.
Kind of what the yin energy is. It's kind of almost like disarming. It's really hard to get hurt when you're practicing a lot of the yin stuff, right? And then that's those sort of more manipulative motions that are just slow and direct. So
yeah, well, that's we said it before, like taking the center. So like if you start to study the grain, feeling the grain in a person's body, like as soon as you make that connection, whether it be hands connecting through hand fighting, or maybe a clinch of some sort, whether it be underhooks or an overhead plume or plum, you'd see in Muay Thai, any point in which you have this connection, this physical connection happen, you can study this grain by feeling what is happening in the other person's body, which sounds amazing. But if you think about the tactile intelligence that we have that run through our hands, the amount of like sensory perceptive connections that are there allow us to feel a lot when we train them. And so you go hand to hand in something like Tai Chi, like push hands, and immediately one of them is reading the other one just as the other one's reading the other one. So there's a play and movement that happens that might seem really subtle, and what it is one reading the start of a certain move, realizing it's been read, and then maybe changing that move. And
so combination attacks,
which we talked about earlier, right? And that's really important. I mean, if you can manipulate someone's grain by, let's say, setting their grain against their will, like for instance, if you double weight somebody on both feet, the chances of you being able to move around them is a lot easier if you're not double weighted. If you're like, a 70-30 split or a 40-60 split, there's a good chance you can manipulate the range and you can manipulate the angle, which will give you a chance to manipulate pressure and all kinds of other stuff. So if you can double weight somebody through putting pressure on them, whether it be physically or even through like a ki like they do in karate, which just is frightening their sensory system.
Yeah.
Right? The loud noises or throwing something at them, get them to stay like, loaded up. There's a better chance of you then being able to manipulate their grain because you've set the grain how you want it to be set. So when it comes to like throws, for instance, if you have the ability to double weight somebody or set up weight on a certain leg that you want to take, the chance of you getting that throw more often than not is way better. And so
it's like the steps to the move.
Yeah, the grain is part of those steps.
Yep.
And we talked about Kazushi before, and Kazushi, the art of taking balance and keeping balance. In order to really get to the Kazushi, you have to understand the grain, because I have to be able to feel, I have to be able to understand what I feel and feel this depth of what their whole body's doing right down to the toe. And once you understand the grain, you actually will feel when his shoulder gets tight, if it's connected to muscles down to his foot through pressure, or if it's hanging loose and the pressure's broken at some point.
There's multi-discipline sort of activity going on here to do the math and on all these things that are happening.
It's a ton, right? You know, and that's what's cool about Shizen Den is that they give names to a lot of this stuff. You know, so like the idea of the grain, Kazushi. I mean, Kazushi's an older term from judo, but the Shizen Den's taking a lot of these ideas and these names and principles and then putting them all together. And it's something that a lot of, like, I don't know a lot of arts that don't do all this stuff. You know, the contrapposto, the idea of, you know, creating that contrapposture in the body,
the power within the hips and
That's
the twists and the leverage points of power. What, you know, in this training of contrapposto, I've also learned that it's also breath. It's about saving energy within.
Yeah.
So using your leverage twists and footwork, now your breath is a lot better.
Huge, right? It's like that wax and that wane of the ocean and the moon. Like, it's if we don't allow our body to relax in the places where it's not needed and only tightening it up in places that, you know, is needed, then we can create a full spectrum of movement every time. So there's less chance of me getting tired when I'm fighting and I'm allowing this full range of motion in my lungs to happen through my body's expression of movement. And it seems like a lot, but we do it all the time. Like when people are used to jogging, for instance, they'll breathe on a certain cadence. And wrestlers, jiu-jitsu guys, the same thing. Most martial artists will set up some sort of rhythm in which they breathe. And of course, you know, that can be manipulated by the right opponent. But at the same time, like for ourselves, our biggest worry is just like keeping that breath going and making sure that each motion we use is strong and efficient. So something like, you know, understanding contrapposto and breaking that down from your golf swing to your soccer kick to your judo throw to your stick whack, it's basically all the same thing.
Yep.
You know, and Musashi was saying in his book of the 5 Rings, he said to make your martial arts your everyday expression and your everyday expression to be your martial arts. And I think of that as like, what principles of movement, what principles of mental strategy can I affect in my daily life that don't obviously cause harm to anyone, but at the same time allow me to create that practice so that it's like an
exploration.
Yeah, it's a natural reaction.
It's an ongoing practice to add more experience and the math to then equate a better practice.
Constantly.
And if I can interject, there's the quote I remember from that book is, I believe something like, if you know the way broadly, you will see it in all things.
Yes.
So it's like you're saying, knowing those broad movement methods, then you can apply them to every activity that requires movement, which is most of life.
Cool.
Right,
I was down in San Francisco playing the U.S. in rugby and for the classics, and I went to the Asian Art Museum, and Miyamoto Musashi's scrolls, his original scrolls, were there on display.
Very cool.
And I was like, whoa. They were written by one of his disciples, but you know, he went up into the cave, over 70 battles to the death, two-handed samurai warrior, went up to the cave and wrote the book of the 5 Rings.
Very
for
cool.
Students. Yeah. So this is a lot of different practices, and then you know, topping it all that off with living in the cave, not fighting, and practicing the other arts of maybe removing the fight. He removed himself from the fight by being up in the cave, but
he got into tea ceremony and he got into calligraphy.
Oh.
And he became apparently masters of both of those. And he also actually wrote there was a couple other books. One of them is called the Dokodu. The Art of Wandering Alone.
Whoa.
And it's
Cool.
pretty cool, man. It's the like ultimate hobo book.
That it just looks like the show of David Carradine walking, as my look,
Totally.
be watching him walk forever and take on all these tasks.
Well, and he went through it, the Dokudo, in his own way. It might not have been written into the script, but just the stuff he dealt with, how he dealt with it. A lot of that is in the Art of Wandering Alone.
Yeah.
Because I think it's only 24 precepts.
Okay.
And then each one of those would be expanded on depending on the situation you're in. But it's the idea of like how to keep yourself safe and how to be most efficient while you're going from place to place.
Cool. A little more ninja training.
Oh, it totally is. Yeah.
And we say ninja training because that's like the art of everything almost. Like the ninja has to get in to town and into the forest and all types of terrains.
Well, what was funny too is like as much as Musashi is this revered samurai, Ronin samurai, he was very much more ninja.
Yeah.
As much as like that might piss some people off.
Well, as he evolved, through the cave days.
Well, and he was sneaky as fuck.
Yeah.
Like you think about like a lot of his fights.
Yeah.
He would be like, "I'll meet you tomorrow at 6. I'll be there. I'll fight you."
Yeah.
He didn't show up at 6. He showed up the next day at like 8 in the morning. You do things like that, or like show up just as you're sitting down for food. Like he played games.
Okay.
Opposed to like.
So he was a sneaky artist as well.
Yeah, he's really sneaky.
And you find that sneakiness is the way to win. You find, the wildlife adapts new techniques. The little dangling worm fish in the bottom of the depths, and then eats the fish that comes for it.
Yeah. 100%.
So all these things are adaptations, right?
Well, and I think honestly, like the symbol for ninja is like it's a sword, a blade above a heart. That's the two symbols that make up the word that we often throw around. It's this nin and this ja. It's like, and it's the idea of the way I was taught. It's the hard endurance. It's the enduring heart. So it's good to break it right down in the sense that it's this heart with this hardship of the blade over top of it, but the heart's enduring, and that's that ability to adapt. Let's say we have to get into this castle, and we can't pretend to be gardeners. We can't pretend to be, a monk or anything like that to get in there, because they would often let us in. But we have to actually somehow sneak in. So it's kind of like a hard camouflage. We have to dress up. We have to climb walls. We have to go through moats. We might have to sit and muck for, 2 days before whatever vessel moves out of the way. There's all these different elements that are really hard that creates this enduring heart and this like hardship, this adaptability to hardship to get strong against it. And I think that's why Musashi got so good when he was off on his own in the wilderness, because he was training against the elements. And the elements, as we know, Mother Nature is the strongest stuff around. It's always there. It's always a hardship. And this ever-enduring heart that had to deal with these hardships, get strong from it, and not just endure, but then adapt to it and overcome it. And that's what makes me think about Musashi being like a ninja, is it he didn't, show up on time, rarely, and he wouldn't even use the same weapon that they thought he was going to use. He killed a guy with an oar at one point, who thought he was going to show up with a sword. He's very adaptable to the situation. He played the odds so that he would win, and it was more of the art of winning,
knowing when to fight.
Yeah, knowing when to fight, knowing when to not.
Is there any stories of him, I guess, backing down or tricking? Or?
Oh man, there's one school. There's a Shinto. I think it's Shinto Ryu. I might be wrong, but I think it might be Shinto Ryu. And there's one school that is currently still a school, because a lot of schools shut down, that say that one of their students beat Musashi. Didn't kill him, obviously, but beat him. They swear by it. Nobody else has this in writing, but these guys do. So who knows, man?
Yeah, they're like, we beat him. Well, then what happened? He was just spared or something?
I think so. I think it was like a joust of some sort. Like it was more of kind of like some hard sparring.
The guy survived to tell the tale.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and
I got him.
he didn't get like the tricky. So maybe if it was to the death, he might have gotten the hot coffee or something. You know, there might have been more to it.
So is there any of that now? Like, are the gyms and training facilities going to other areas and training with and or, you know, for this mystical title where they're training different gyms to see who the toughest guy is?
There probably is people who doing it secretly, on their own, who float between gyms. I know from my own personal studies, I like to go places and learn with lots of different teachers and learn with lots of different students. I find that it allows me to see holes in my movement and in my expression of different arts. It allows me to see what I'm doing wrong for that moment, for that situation, and I do my best to then learn from that. But I mean,
it's also different body shapes, ranges. Guys can reach right around your back.
Yes.
And you're like, what the fuck?
That was crazy.
Grab my weapons.
Yeah.
And so that then is an understanding of range and all these principles that we're looking at. That's sort of so important.
Right, and that's with our Gospel of the Blade, that's a lot what that is like it's an exploration of how can we do this better? How can we do this better against more situations? How can we do this better and more efficient over and over and over again? And let's add in different variables. You know, even if we have multiple attackers.
Closed eyes.
Yeah, closed eyes, that shit's horrible. You know, like any of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
How can we add pressure to it in a way that's... because it's all fake, you know, like it's all, unless we're running around with a real knife with the real intentions, it's still not as close as the real thing.
No.
If we don't have the factor of surprise involved, it's not really a real thing, because, you know, like rarely do you have, you know, knife duels. You know, like even though most martial arts that are bladed martial arts, they train knife duels, there isn't a lot of knife duels that happen in the world anymore. It's almost always an ambush. Which I think we're seeing kind of a change. There's a slight change. I don't want to say change, but there's groups of people in martial arts right now who are starting to look more at like ambush style knife, ambush style gun. There's like, I don't want to say like ambush style gun is an ambush style like assassin style shooting, but for instance, getting ambushed for your weapon. Like someone trying to take your firearm. So there's BJJ schools full of cops that are looking at how do I actually keep that weapon, or if I start to lose it, how do I recover it? And I think that's frigging awesome, because I mean, that's a really dangerous situation if you're just a holster for somebody else.
Well, without all this training, and you know, I got a story for you. In 2015, around there was a knife duel that I happened to walk into.
Yeah, shit.
And I hadn't trained with you, and I wished, you know, I had before. But we were walking down for a doobie down at the beach by Value Village, and there was this cool kid fixing skateboards and making taking all the parts of these broken skateboards for, you know, less fortunate youth. We stopped and talked to him, and he was sitting there, he's putting all these boards together. I thought, fuck, this is cool. We went and had a doobie. We came walking back, and the kid who was doing the skateboards was in an argument with a foreign man who was screaming back at him. And as we walked by, the man pulled out a knife.
Oh, shit.
And so I was across the street. I saw this sort of happening, and I just beelined right for him. And I used the awareness, the voice, and all those things that we talked about after the fact. But so I just yelled at him, and it got his attention, and said, "Hey, put that fucking knife away." And as I was doing that, the brother of the little skateboard kid came flying by with a BMX ghosted the BMX and jumped off his BMX with a knife.
Oh my God.
And I was in the middle of, so I'm in the middle of the BMX kid's brother, who's hot for saving his little brother, and then this other guy, and I just looked both sides, and all I could do was kind of use anger and voice to quell the situations and stop them from, and I'm in the middle of it now. And so that's what I did, and I was successful.
Well, that's good.
Fortunately.
Good. Yeah, fortunately.
But, I had no knife fucking training or anything like that. I was just focusing on the awareness, the body language that was shown once I got, control of the grain.
Yeah.
I could see, okay. And there was 200 people in the middle of the day watching this, so it was a pretty wild event. Broke it up, started walking back to the shop, and SWAT came and picked up that fucking guy right away.
Yeah.
So it was good that, Victoria's there quickly with their guys. And it's good now, because I was in that experience, to learn all of these realistic things.
Yeah.
That could have
Well, I believe there was
assisted me.
actually a guy that got killed recently on Yates Street near
Yeah.
Lucky Bar there.
Yeah, I
somehow. I
heard
don't know what the altercation was, but
Well, a lot of alcohol and these posturings,
yeah,
weapon posturings that
you're-
then
yeah.
get used. So, what we're studying is knife defense, knife awareness, and these practices are necessary with the amount of trash people that are being held in a circle of drug use and no mind activity right here on Pandora.
Oh, it's crazy.
So
it's crazy. And that knife altercation, the one at Lucky Bar, from my understanding, what happened, it sounded like it was a guy expecting a fight with fist, and another guy going right to a knife. And one of the guys we were training with today, he brought that up. He was talking about rear naked chokes and using the rear naked choke in fight situations, at house parties, on the street, and da da da. Don't get me wrong, getting choked from behind, I've had that happen before. It happens quick. And if you don't have any sort of training and the person really knows what you're doing, there's milliseconds for you before you start to see red and you go out and you just fall asleep. But now, in the mix on the street, there's so many variables that could happen. It's not a soft ground. The walls aren't flat around you and soft. There's all kinds of things that could change the variables. And so it's like the techniques that we're working on, we're trying to think of what are our best options. Because if somebody is grabbed around the neck that has a knife on them, the pencil, anything sharp, they might immediately grab it and start attacking, the inside of the leg of the person behind them, which exposes the femoral artery, so that person could bleed out real quick, probably faster than they would have if they just faced the person head on. Also, possibly, depending on how they're holding it, could be stabbing upwards towards the face and the neck behind them. A lot of situations. I mean, the problem is the way the world's going right now, there needs to be more of an emphasis on a warrior class. And I don't
which is actually not the way the world is going. There's a real attack on masculinity and
softening for sure,
and creating softness.
Yeah,
so
they want it for some reason.
So this what you want to get back to is some of the things that made history, made things safe.
Yeah, well, that's it. Is like, simply being able to tell somebody to take a hike that is, possibly maybe using drugs in your backyard.
Yeah.
Or things like that. It's like just having the strength of character, to set things straight around you when you see things being done wrong. I'm not saying going out and looking for fights.
You're saying that this system is really a bully system,
Yeah.
with bullies all around, and standing up to bullies is one way of looking at it.
That's honestly that ends up what happens is often, like we had a fella a couple weeks ago wanting to use drugs in behind here, and we were asking him to leave. And, he tried a number of different modes, different strategies to stay in the spot he was in so that he could use drugs.
Different intimidation techniques that had worked before. So.
Yeah, tried a bunch of stuff. He lied to us and said at one point he didn't have any drugs. He clearly had a needle in his hand and a blowtorch in the other. Like he was getting ready to do what he was doing. And, he also kind of just gave us that energy to just go away. But of course, obviously ended up leaving, realized it just wasn't worth his stress either after a little de-escalation game.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest things now. It's like when we say being strong, being masculine, it doesn't mean like beating people up.
No.
It doesn't even mean like being mean to them.
Does it mean using your awareness, using your intelligence from your practice to make them go away without a fight?
Yeah, man, stop it.
Take the knife away without having to fight, just by using your voice and saying, "Hey, the police are around the corner. You want to put that thing away? Oh, don't come near me." Or just using other awarenesses, and that's a big part of the training that we've been doing is awareness.
Every chance we get,
like removing a fight from it even happening.
Yeah. And that's it. Is like, all the stuff that we're doing with the knife, especially in these clinch ranges, it's like we've made so many. If that happens, we've made a lot of mistakes. If I'm up against a wall and I've got I got 2-on-1, I got two hands on his one hand, and he's got a knife, I've made a list of mistakes already.
Yeah.
For some reason, I wasn't aware to that person even anywhere near my bubble. I had gotten my hands already to a place that for whatever reason I wasn't able to strike from. So now here I am just working on just the knife.
And that's the fun though too, to get to that far and practice. Oh, I'm gonna give my buddy a little stab with a wood knife, and his adrenaline's like, you get that sense of feeling what it would really feel like, and you're like, wow, I'm not gonna mess around.
It's crazy
knives.
with a wooden knife.
With a wooden knife, and you're blocking. You think you're gonna do some movie block. Oh yeah,
yeah.
And then it's just a little and your wrist. So we're definitely not advocating knife fights.
No, not at all.
What we do is train awareness, practice, eyesight, movement, hand coordination, mind, foot coordination. I find that all of these practices are opening up pathways to
100%
way better coordination.
Well, think about
multiple things.
This is like our Frank would call this our retirement plan. So it's like at some point we're gonna get old. If we live, we'll get old. Our bodies won't work as well. Supposedly, we are, all the parts of it start to break down. And I think that if we keep up these kinds of practices in which we can adjust the yin and the yang, right? The different types of pressures, we can adjust the focuses on different parts of the game. So maybe we break down the game even smaller, and all we're doing is a one-handed back and forth push hands of just connecting to each other's centers back and forth while we move our feet around. Something as simple as this we could do if we're both heavily injured and even sick with the fucking plague. And yet in 20 years from now when we're older, this is going to help build our balance. This is going to help to keep our structure, keep our bones strong. And if we keep doing it even older, I mean, the chances of us falling down and breaking a hip are very slim.
Ankles,
that's right.
All being moved in a 360-degree way adds for a super strong foundation.
Yeah, it's huge.
And all these things that we're practicing could be put into other arts or sports or for the development of people and the things that they don't know yet.
Oh,
each little learning section brings them up to another level of clarity of their own body and its practical uses.
That's enormous. I mean, even something as simple as like, let's say you're not playing any sports at all, but your job is you're a swamper, so you use you're basically a mover. You move people's furniture. A job like that. if you don't have a healthy back, because you often see those guys and get the belts wrapped around, and it has to do with their core not being strong evenly. It's compensating on one side or the other, or they've already created some sort of an injury, probably due to one of those processes of being too strong on one side, weak on the other, push and pull, really. But if we can stop that kind of imbalance before it happens through our internal martial arts, you could call it.
Yeah.
Focusing on these yin movements, whether it be my shifting or my leaning forward or back, all these kinds of things makes our feet strong right down to the toes. And the more and more we can kind of play games in which we could even say artfully allow us to train these things, the more we'll do it, we'll enjoy it and we'll get better at it. And like you said, it overlaps on everything. I mean, I've seen guys that had only been doing this stuff, this kind of martial arts for a year, go from somebody who is heavily flat-footed to someone who actually can move around and box. They can actually move their feet and take proper pivots and proper side steps. And that's, less than a year. And all the practice is a daily kind of orientation, a daily understanding of locating all the different points in your body that need a different type of movement for whatever the action is.
I've always thought that was what the purpose of yoga in many respects was, or at least certain parts of yoga is you're kind of doing a body diagnostic.
Yeah.
You're like testing, let's see if this muscle's still working.
And yoga's great. I mean, a friend of ours recently was injured, and he wanted to go to kickboxing, and I was like, you should be going to yoga.
Yeah.
I was like, between the breath work and full range of motion, and you're just going to get stronger and healthier, and then that overlaps to everything.
We've got a event coming up tomorrow that coincides with fueling the body to do these amazing things, right? And so the Nature Chef is here tomorrow, bringing wild foods from Souk, and sort of the Quadrupod's sort of building a community of health and wellness practices, movement, fire, 5 pillars of survival with yourself, and what we're kind of bringing in is this art of living, of being in the moment, of being present while you eat foods from around here that are grown in the wild forests, and then coming up at the right seasons. And then after the food, we've got Soren with laughter yoga, which is
That's awesome.
alchemizing yourself and your body with positive thoughts. So I like to think that we're exploring more avenues. We've got a market coming up here as well. And so reaching out to people and their, arts of practice really kind of interests me for my own health, but also the health of the community we have.
And that's huge, man. Like being able to have a hub, like that, where you're bringing in multiple disciplines of health and wellness. Whether, it's just physical, whether, that overlaps to the mental or in the spiritual, the energetic. I mean, they all, honestly, a purely physical-based health program will, if it's properly done, should affect the mental health.
Yeah.
And that should affect the spiritual health and the energetic health.
Yeah.
It should
and the
all
breath
overlap.
work.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it all goes hand in hand.
It really does.
That's why it's so important.
Yeah.
So when somebody's sitting on the couch eating the potato chips and they don't want to do something, at least these classes, they're fun.
Oh,
you get
my
your
God.
adrenaline going. You're like,
Yeah.
you're excited. You're like, I got to get down to Quadrupod because we're doing knife defense. And it's laughing, it's adrenaline and all these
push-ups.
emotions. Oh, a lot of push-ups.
Well, it's another similar activity to the Mile Zero minnows,
Yeah,
which you're doing almost every day there, Kit.
yeah.
And that's like you said, you're almost like you're dying every day
Dying every day.
to live. So if you're doing your knife training as well, it's like you're potentially dying every day and having that adrenaline of being close to that, to at least a surrogate level, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely doing water martial art training because every day's different and every practice is different. Like some day I'll go, okay, I'm going to dive off the rocks and swim underneath water as far as I can go. And like, that's the art of the day. That's the day practice. Or we're going to swim out deep water and dive to the bottom and do those things. So I find that, you know, the stormy day, oh man, we got 3 of us were out there and we got hit by a wave so hard it pulled us back 15 feet. Hit me in the back like I was like a little baby. Ba-boom! And those kind of things added in to your day just make you expand in different areas all the time. So this is what I like to do is 369. I want to grow in the information in my mind, in my body's experiences, and then also know, you know, what certain things do. I ran to the beach today, and I hadn't just a little jog, but I had no sleeves. I had my thing on, and my arms got so cold.
Yeah, for sure.
That they were already cold when I got there, and then when I went in the water, I got out, and my hands and arms were the coldest that I've had them because of that one little thing different. So all these mathematical things change daily.
Yep.
And then with the martial arts, you know, you talk about the topography, the climate, the oxygen in the air, all these other factors that you're building with awareness. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's so important. Because if your awareness of a cliff is right there or something's close, then you're not going to fall down.
Right.
So,
and it could be something as simple as like, let's say I want to set a trap for an animal since we're talking cliffs.
Yep.
Certain animals have certain habits. And so if I want to get like a dog, for instance, that usually will go around the trap, then I might even put it somewhere that they can't go around it, you know, like the side of a cliff.
Yep.
There's having an awareness of everything as much as we can, as much as a big job that is. It's way better than just droning out our lives with useless TV shows.
It's almost that is the art, because if your awareness is really heightened, then you won't get into the fight. You won't get into the danger situation.
That's right, and that's like what I was saying about like the knife stuff. It's like if I am holding a 2-on-1 on a knife, I've made so many mistakes leading to that point.
Yeah,
there's been a list of mistakes that we could go through. I mean, one might be I'm in the wrong area. I might be totally in the wrong neighborhood, and I should have been aware of that. Or maybe I was flashing jewelry or flashing money. Maybe I
life lessons.
Yeah, a whole bunch of them.
You look back and you reflect back and you go, oh, wow, that's why that happened. Oh,
right.
That's
real, man.
That's good for reflection, because when we're reflecting on our practices, that's how we're connecting the dots.
Honestly, I think without reflection, I think that we put ourselves at kind of in a bad spot. Like if we're only thinking, you know, here's the thing, like there's always a balance. There's always a Kazushi to everything, I think. And I think that when it comes to reflection, some people will say that you're living too much in the past and that you have to live only in the present. And I think that there's a balance in living in the future, in the past, and the present, in that I'm able to learn from the past in a way that allows me to possibly plan for the moment, which is now.
Yeah.
And we know that from school. You know, we know that from different types of education. Just what we're talking about right now with all this kind of training. Someone comes to one of our classes, let's say like the one we did last night, 5 Pillars of Survival's focus on the concrete jungle survival. The details that we went over with the food.
Break that down for a bit.
Oh yeah, okay.
5 Pillars of Survival is a 5-week course on urban survival, like using the urban surroundings in an earthquake situation, in any situation that arises. It's to survive those moments or practice for those maybe moments.
Yeah, the maybe moments. And, you know, I say maybe because people, you know, some people go through their entire lives without ever getting into a physical conflict. And I applaud them. I think that's amazing. Sometimes it's through the fate of the cosmos. I have no idea. Sometimes it just works out that way, and I appreciate that. But there's also an enormous part of our population that at some point in their life has to deal with things that are outside of the norm that way, whether it be house fires, earthquakes, floods, domestic violence, street violence. There's a huge
War
part
zones.
of the population. War zones. That's right. Holy fuck. Yeah, exactly. War zones. In our own case, we live in Victoria, BC, which is pretty far removed from a lot of the problems that other parts of the world face. We have regular clean water, comes out of the tap. Our grocery stores, even during panic buying moments, are still better stocked than some places in the world. We've got a lot going on here.
Got very good medicines.
We have wicked smoke, right? But that puts us at a disadvantage in the sense that we aren't properly conditioned for the things that could happen and that do happen. So, for instance, if you guys have listened to previous podcasts, you know that I nearly avoided a bit of a kidnapping incident in Cambodia a number of years ago. Had that been somebody else, their situation might have been a lot different in that they might have just gotten kidnapped and robbed for everything or whatever was going to happen. And I think that the study that we're trying to implement with the 5 pillars of survival, food, fire, water, shelter, security.
Yep.
The study that we're implementing with this 5 pillars of survival is the same thing as martial arts, is we want to take a look at all the different ways that we can use these 5 pillars, these 5 elements, to then secure our safety and adapt to each situation. So I'll look at how do I make fire as many times in as many ways as I can possibly think of. Instead of just being like, okay, well, I have a lighter. I can buy lighters at the store. It's true, you totally can. But the off chance that you actually have to make a fire without a lighter because you forgot it, or it's broken, or it's out of fuel.
I want to interject there because it could be meditation as well. Like when you're studying all these different types of fire, you're learning. You're doing breath work. You're relaxed in your mind. You're not thinking about fucking some bullshit Trump hair wafting and some crappy social media fucking. No, I'm serious. Like
I know.
Like,
This is funny.
this
People do get so focused on all kinds of things.
Well, so now you've got this cool
On the
art.
slap. What do you think about the slap, Darcy?
Oh my God!
No, let's not talk about
That
that.
was. It's crazy though that people will It's like, okay, you're a grown man. You don't know how to make fire in the fucking rain, and you're bent out of shape about some bullshit that happened on social media.
Yeah.
It's like, grow the fuck up.
So that there is part of the art.
Yeah.
You get the benefits of the knowledge of the practice, but it's the practice in the moment that sort of sets you free.
Well, that's why I think why they say stay in the moment.
Yeah.
Don't get bent out of shape at things that happened in your past. Don't worry about things that haven't happened yet in your future. But finding a balance. Just as in our martial arts practice, finding a balance between the 3, it seems to be the safest place because then you can adapt to whatever ends up happening. And I mean, the more and more we practice these things, like making fire in different situations with different materials, whether it be friction fires, chemical fires, electrical fires, all these different things, add benefits to our overall understanding of survival. Because let's say I get really used to making fire in one particular way with one particular material. I get into a situation where I don't have the material. I can effectuate that technique, but I don't have the material I'm used to using.
You see that on these Naked and Afraid shows and stuff. They're I'm a great at making fire with the bow drill, and then they get there like, I haven't used this wood before.
Yeah.
What the hell?
No, and that's it. It's like, looking at the details of the principle. And I think that's why principle-based learning is so important. Like we were talking earlier about the Shizen Den model of using things like words like contrapposto to describe that twisting motion, and then breaking that down as a principle. Because it's the same thing with fire. It's like, okay, a friction fire. So I'm used to bow drill with, let's say, cedar.
Yep.
And my brain, when I go somewhere in the tropics, and I'm like trying to make a bow drill out of bamboo, and I'm like, holy crap, this doesn't work. It's made out of grass.
Yeah.
Now I have to look at it in the same way, but with some variations. And that's why they have things like the saw method, or the plow method because they make more sense for the material that you're using. It's a slight variation, but it's the same thing. I want to keep constant pressure. I want to make sure that I'm creating friction through movement.
Yeah, and so you'll be able to do those styles because you've studied what is the necessary steps.
Yeah.
Pressure of friction, all the other little
you know the
intricacies.
required
Yeah.
needs of a fire, which we've gone over before.
Right.
The fire triangle.
Yeah,
So we
triangle.
did food. We did food on. That was yesterday.
Yeah, it was last night.
And then, so fire, which is
Next
a
week.
big component, is
Huge.
next week. Can people still get into this class? What's going on?
This
It's
is
all full. Or
It's
what?
shut. Yeah, it's shut down. We've
Oh,
shut
bro.
down registration for it.
So when will this class come up again? Or are there videos that they can watch and tune into your network? 'Cause,
There's videos of past classes
Yep.
available.
Yep.
This class is a closed loop.
Okay.
But we are going to have more classes that come up after this one.
Yep.
In which we're going to focus on a lot of the same principles of survival.
So people can sign up ahead of time and say, okay, I'm very interested in the fire one. Why? Oh, because you get to eat. You get hot from the fire.
Yeah.
Fire's kind of important.
Oh, it's huge.
like-
It's totally. I mean, we need it for so many things, and when you understand how to use it, it can be not just for heating and for food, but we can use it for shaping things.
Yeah.
Like that bowl that you're gonna make out of the maple.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maple
you
burl.
burn out the middle of it, and
Yep.
then it's easier to scrape out
Right?
and stuff.
Well, I sure tried to scrape it out with my blade, and it was like little fucking dust off it. It's so tightly wound.
One question I was going to ask Darcy: how easy is it to make fire with just a battery, say, out of a remote control or something? Is that? And do you need a couple little wires or something? Or?
It depends on what else you have with you. Because you could use something like a 9-volt battery from like a fire detector, and those are quite easy to make a fire using.
On your tongue.
Yeah. You want to use like a Brillo pad, which are
yeah.
something that are often found in people's garages.
Would the SOS pad work? Can I get the soap out?
You'd have to wash the soap out, then dry it.
Okay. Well, good to know if you know.
If that's all you got. There's also methods of using. Remember that gum, Juicy Fruit?
Yeah. The tin foil.
Juicy
in
fruit
there.
is gonna move.
It's
ya.
gonna start
Is
your
that stuff-
fire.
That they stuck that advertisement deep into my
Right.
back of my brain.
Everybody-
Well, and it's the guy doing the skiing.
Right.
Spread
But
eagle.
it's a tin foil out of that you're.
Yeah, because it's got paper on it. So what you could do is you could create a shape. You cut a shape out of that tin foil to wrap around the edges of a regular battery, like a long lengthways battery, like a AAA or a AA.
Right.
And you could take like the wrap and cut it almost like kind of like in our PTK footwork arch.
Just
two
to get a
triangles.
thin part.
Yeah, we want to have like the two wide parts, so it almost looks like an hourglass.
Yep.
And then we'll have that thin part in the middle. And so what we'll do is take the two wider parts, put those on the positive and negative, hold them there, and it'll heat up the center by throwing a charge right through it. And now supposedly, I mean, I've done this a couple times, but I can't say I've done enough that it'll work every time. But it'll bring you a flame to the paper. So I mean, that's one way to do it. I mean, there's a million ways, really. It's when it comes down to chemicals and how they function, because like that's, even though it's an electrical fire, when you really break it down, it's a chemical fire because of the way you're utilizing the acids within the battery. So that in itself, I'm sure we could break open batteries and use it to make a heat source or a flame simply based on what's in it, opposed to the mixture of those things, because that's what the electrical the electrical mechanism is.
So that's studying all
I'm
different
not
types.
up on my battery acids personally, but I'm sure you are more than I, and
Just a little bit.
it's possible to be learned about that. Yeah, I know. The only chemical fire that I've been aware is I use linseed oil for polishing stone carvings, and you got to be careful not to leave the wet, soaked linseed oil rag. I think it applies to a lot of oils because it'll just spontaneously combust.
Oh, in the sun or something?
I don't know all the conditions, but
Just a little bit of oxygen. That's
yeah,
part of it.
yeah.
Huh.
I guess a hot day it has to be warm enough, but it has like a really low
Because
ignition point. You know?
compost piles can self-ignite too, and it's just the heat generated. So maybe knowing a little bit about all these principles will allow you to get a fire going in tough situations.
Well, and when we talk about fire in the 5 pillars, we're often thinking about it even more than just than a flame, and more than just a heat. Like it could be a lot.
Security.
Yeah, like it could be a whole bunch of things. I mean, maybe I'm in a place where there's wild animals at night that I am uncomfortable sleeping around.
Mm-hmm.
A fire could help me to stay safe.
Or at least just get you some sleep because you feel safe.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I don't mean like really safe.
Yeah,
I just mean
I'm
like,
not really safe. The bear's still coming.
Yeah, like a fire on a stick like is enough
Yeah.
for some people to sleep.
I feel good.
Yeah.
At least it allows you to see what's coming.
Yeah, that's right. You get to watch yourself get eaten. But, and there's different ways of making fire smokeless. Like the idea of the denohi that we're going to look at next week. It's a Japanese word, so that's why it's hard to recognize. But it's basically an old form of a coal carrier.
Okay.
That you can use for creating new fires. You can use it for cooking. You can use it for keeping yourself warm. You could use it for signals. You could use it for shaping things by melting them or burning them. It's a great tool, and they're really easy to make.
And if you're a hobo of sorts living in the city or something, you need to have a fire without smoke.
Oh, it's huge.
It's important.
Well, and that's, we kind of talked a little bit last night about different kinds of survival. Do I want to be found? Do I not want to be found?
Mm-hmm.
This will change how I do everything.
Yeah.
Ninjutsu training.
Well, maybe I want to be found. Maybe there was an earthquake and I want the government to come find me on.
Or your truck broke down up in the woods somewhere.
That's
and you're
right.
like, yeah.
I want to be found, or there's some other situation where I don't want to be found. And so how do I manipulate those 5 elements, those 5 pillars, so that
Probably a lot of ocean or river traveling.
It could help. I mean, depending on where you are, depending on the country, terrain, temperature, laws, like what they have available, like if they're tracking you, what do they have available to see you with? Do they have drones? Are they areas that are already set up with cameras? It depends on all these elements.
Mm-hmm.
You might even want to go through the sewer system to get from A to B. It's, looking at all the different avenues, running through people's backyards, through houses, over houses, like however you need to get there, it's good to have the skill set to do it.
Mm-hmm. So that would be, I guess, some practice of climbing fences.
Yeah, the parkour.
Yeah, doing some parkour stuff, just so that you're like, oh, I can actually climb this chain link fence and jump over the thing and land it. And my ankles are good. I'm strong.
Yeah, or knowing you can't.
Yeah, well, knowing you can't,
Right.
it means...
You've all seen those YouTube videos of people jumping on a swing set.
Yeah.
And they're like 40, 45 years old, and you can tell they have not done that in 20, 30
Yeah.
years.
Exactly. So
They rarely
taking
are
the
able
time
to do
to
it.
slowly get to that point.
Yeah, exactly. Know where you're at. Have a
Because you don't
baseline.
want... It's something...
You mean jumping off a swing set?
Jumping, like you ever see them like there's ones jumping off the swing set, but then there's like the bigger ones that have like the bar systems.
Monkey bars?
Monkey bars. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Oh, I see. So you're talking about like the jungle gyms. So
The jungle gyms, and they have the
Pull in
swing
there.
sets as well,
Right.
but it's
but
like
you can tell that their body is not
prepared.
at all for any jungle gymming.
Those extra burgers really sort of added up.
Well, I mean, I know for myself, like I eat relatively healthy, but I know where my limit of movement is. I know that I can't do.
You probably couldn't scale that brick wall across the street there just with your fingertips.
No,
Whereas
totally.
somebody could probably.
So there's somebody out there
Alex
that could,
Honnold probably could.
he could run up it. There's
Yeah.
people who could crush a climb like that. Even my brother-in-law could probably climb that pretty quickly. Or like some of the amazing taekwondo hurricane kicks. I know that's outside of my wheelhouse. They like being able to spin like 2 times around in the air. Fucking amazing.
Yeah,
Well-
you kind of know what you need to do to get to that point.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
You're not at that level yet.
Yeah. No, and I think that we were talking about preparing for all different kinds of situations. That's why dirt time is so important. It's to understand how to do the thing, yes, but also to realize where you're at.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know lots of times, and you get to the point, oh shit, I didn't prepare for this. Wet matches, wet this, wet something, yeah.
Or like there's one variation in your system.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you're used to setting up your tent in a certain way, and now you have hail that's sideways instead of regular old rain, and it's like your situation now changes. And just being able to like adapt to that, it really comes from the practice and the play.
So should people get more social? Because if they're trapped inside, they've been on the couch watching TV, they kind of want to do something, but they don't know who and how and where. This is a place where people can gather and find those people that can show them the way.
Well, there's definitely and there's a ton of different groups all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Like I heard on a radio the other night, shortwave radio, these guys were talking, and there's a group that meets up. There's a net, as they call it, a group of people that meet up every night for an hour and just, hey, how's it going, Bob? Hey, how's it going, Dave?
Yeah.
And they talk for a few minutes about things, and then they're off. And they do that for an hour every night and have for the last 2 years.
On the shortwave radio, eh? That's cool.
Yeah, it's really
going
neat.
way back. Carry on.
Yeah, no, it was really neat to stumble across
So
that.
that's communication, and that's
And there's community.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. I mean, that's one of the things about martial arts is that like it allows us to have a focal point in which we enjoy, and that's healthy. It creates healthy relationships, healthy experiences, and we get to meet however often that is, whoever that is, and we do that thing. It's kind of like a stitch and bitch.
Mm-hmm.
We could sit around and stitch clothing and bitch about whatever it is that bothers us.
We get it out through stabby.
Yeah,
Stab.
trying to stab and choke each other. Yeah, I think that more people should really do it. I think that they would be a healthier society to, like I mentioned earlier briefly, the idea of the warrior culture. It doesn't have to be a violent culture. It like being in Thailand, I would call that a warrior culture.
Mm-hmm.
And they're some of the nicest people on the planet. But not each one of them, but almost every single person I met there
Capable.
had some Muay Thai experience, some Muay Brawn, some Krabi Karbong, had some traditional study of how to punch, kick, and throw or hit with a stick.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, I think because of that, they were really chill. Even when situations came up, they didn't lose their cool.
Yep.
I saw a few different times where fights and altercations were going to happen that were in the wrong spot. And locals just came up and as chill as fuck, just shut it right down.
Yeah.
And confident, really, really confident, but really chill energy. And I think that's that balance, that yin and yang, I think that's why it's so powerful, is because you have that moment in which you need one or the other, and some moments when you need both at the same time. And being able to differentiate, do I push, do I pull, do I let go?
Do I run?
Do I run? Holy fuck. And, and with our knife stuff, that is something we do practice a lot of. We practice getting the frick away from this person trying to stab me.
Yeah.
And, I think that that's something that more martial arts should train is, okay, can I even outrun this guy? And how am I going to outrun him? When I look ahead of me, 20 feet, 30 feet, do I have a clear direction of where I'm going to go? Is there something there I'm going to grab? Like, like a lot of people, even when they do train running drills, it's like, hey, where are you running to? What are you going to grab to hit this guy with?
When's the last time you ran?
Okay, oh, man. Be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
It's better to bleed and sweat in times of peace than times of war.
Achilles heel or hamstring.
Yeah.
So that's what it is making sure that we're strong enough each day to handle all these things, or at least be competent enough to be aware of them and handle what we can handle.
Yeah, then we can train. Once we realize where we're at, what our baseline is, we can then train to that level that we want, going through the steps.
Awesome.
And so another course or class you got coming up, the 5 pillars is already underway. What's in the works here for the next big one?
Well, I've got on the 16th, I believe me and Dante are doing an ocean survival.
Cool.
And we were talking about you possibly coming too, which
that would be a blast.
It would be really fun. Do an overnight on the beach. And Yeah, so I mean, we've got that one coming up on the 16th through the Elemental Collective.
Light and doobies with jellyfish.
Oh my God, it's so high level.
Eating seaweed.
Yeah, that's right. Some merman skills.
Yeah. Well, your pack's a little lighter.
Oh, way later. And you know what? The weather should be good too. I've got that one planned immediately, and then we possibly have on the I think the 21st of this month, or no, sorry, the 26th maybe. We've got a deer tracking class.
Very cool.
So it's gonna be an introduction to how to track wild animals.
Yep.
And we'll probably end up, overlapping it with human tracking because it's really all the same. It's just recognizing things and having that awareness. And then after this 5 weeks of this jungle urban survival program, Concrete Jungle, we're going to take a look at probably some shorter series, probably just like 2 or 3, but there'll be more of a higher focus on the 5 pillars. So we'll take a really deep look at some of the security stuff, the security elements of 5 pillars. Take a look at the knife defense in more in depth, but also just awareness, situational awareness, how to get safely from A to B, whether it be here in this country or possibly in other countries.
Yeah, and this translates to everything. When you're talking about awareness and security, well, cyber security, crypto, all these new things where these principles of survival or practice kind of can equate to everything that is new that's happening too.
Well, the principles are often the same, being aware of your situation is one of the biggest things. And why do you want to be aware? Well, there's parts of your immediate environment that can be of benefit to you, but also a hazard. So being aware of all of these. For myself, I like to bird watch. So being aware of the kinds of places that birds like to go. I was waiting for you for a bit earlier on today before you got here. I was bird watching across the street of the church. There's a spot where the electrical outlet, the wires go into one of the tubes, and there's some house sparrows that are living there.
Yeah.
And, I already kind of had an idea of that as a place to look based on how I know those birds live and act.
So how you get an egg for breakfast?
Yeah, I totally could, right? Yeah, I totally could. I get a series of eggs.
Now you're surviving.
Yeah, I mean, and we could use that as an example simply because it has something of an interest to me. If I go into a situation, let's say, a car breaks down in the city somewhere. It's a city that I'm visiting friends. It's one that I've never been to. So I don't necessarily know exactly where I'm going. I need to find somewhere to pick up some Wi-Fi if I don't have data on my phone, or somewhere where I can use a phone to call a tow truck. But in getting there, all the situations that could arise, in each and every one of them, I have to be aware of. So it means that I have to kind of go through a process of observing what's happening and orientating myself to it, then making a decision of how I'm going to act. So I have to go through this OODA loop. And that, the more I do it in practice, will be easier and easier. So what I'm getting at is training the 5 pillars in a more kind of holistic idea by applying them to multiple situations on a regular basis. Like, how do I make fire in a million ways? How do I make shelter in a million ways? If I'm already thinking like that when I get stuck in that situation in that city I've never been to and I don't know where the frig I'm going, I'll be able to adapt to that situation 100 times easier. Even if I'm stuck that night sleeping in my car, I have a better idea of what to do based on how I build shelter in the woods, if I do it enough, based on those principles.
Yeah. You're doing the math all the time. Now equating it into the problem situation will be smooth and easy for you because you're practicing that.
Yeah, it's like, like we're talking earlier on about like making your everyday like your martial art.
Miramoto Musashi.
Yeah, like a bit of a game. You're just walking down the street, and look, I could use that for that. This for this.
That's all
huge.
fun.
If you want to get your mind off of the slap or whatever else.
It's just called the slap.
The
now.
The slap now. It's the slap for the next couple of years at least. It'll be.
Oh,
Well, I think I'm going to have to sign off here pretty shortly.
Yeah.
I've got to go do something. out in the world here.
All right.
You're not making
But,
the big bucks here at Quadrupod.
My salary's pretty high,
Yeah,
but
I like that.
I've
Pretty
also,
high.
I've got a. I've just have an appointment that I have to get to. So
All right, brother.
Me too.
exactly, we're all very important. Darcy has a class actually coming up. He said at 5 or something.
Yeah, we're going for plant walk.
Plant walk, which
Yeah.
I would like to join you one of these days. Swan.
That'd be
Lake.
awesome.
I found out recently I can do the whole Swan Lake loop
I think you'd like
in
it.
my chair. So
Well, it's total food security.
Yeah, it is.
But
Yeah.
that's also meditative security because once you
Oh, yeah. Beautiful spot.
release the fear of food from your mind, you really free yourself.
Oh yeah. Once you have
too.
a strong bag of tools that you can take anywhere and be competent, the freedom that you get from it is something that is hard to describe otherwise.
Well, thanks for tuning in today, and thanks, Darcy, for,
thanks for having
sticking
me.
around extra here. We've been here since 11, doing knife defense. So if you want to join us, message us because we want to know all about you.
Yeah, I want to
first.
vet you first.
Yeah, we want to know who you are. We want to make sure you're safe.
no spazzes out coming in.
Yeah, I know, because you'll get totally fucked up and hurt. Somebody will whack you with a stick.
So tune in to the upcoming events, Quadrupod tomorrow with Tom.
Yeah, I'll
get your
be having
ticket
this
for
out
that.
tonight at some point. But so if someone watches this within the next,
Half an hour.
no,
2
I'll
hours?
probably have it up
3
by
hours?
8 o'clock tonight. So they'll have
Nice.
You
they'll
are
have-
paid
They'll
well.
have they'll have 16 hours to watch it and then know
Know what's going
to
on.
come. So
Okay,
and otherwise they'll probably see it on the social medias.
perfect.
And then Darcy, L.O.S Strategy, Tertia Online. If those courses still going there.
Oh yeah. We're still adding to them regularly.
Good. And follow Darcy's page there and also Quadrupod for future events of these sorts that were discussed. And tune in next time. Thank you, everybody.
Take care,
For
you guys.
Guys.
Adios.